Paul Gerash, welcome back. Now these are the pieces I have. There's a little split in that there, so I just glued it up again. Now when you're have to do a tenon like that, so it has to be right angles to the actual slope here, which is 5 degrees. And to do that, when you're cutting tenons in the vise, or you're doing any jointing in the vise, always turn the piece to the angle so that it's vertical in the vise. Point number one. Point number two, don't have pieces up in the vise up here. You'll get no great control from it and you'll get a lot of vibration and the saw sticking on you. So everything comes down to sound when you're working with hand tools. So I line up the piece there and the actual tenon now is vertical in the vise there, even though you can't see it on camera. So I start to cut here, furthest away from me, a lovely sharp tenon saw. Now when you're using a tenon saw, everything you're going on is sound, and let the backing iron on it here, let the saw do the work. You're not forcing the saw, it's the weight of the saw that does the cut. It's not like the cheap saws today, they're cheap and cheerful and you just throw them away. They're not designed for doing fine work like this at all. So this is standard Spear & Jackson tenon saw, and when you're doing fine jointing techniques, you're using sound, the sense of sound an awful lot. And I'll explain that in a minute, because the sound from a tenon saw or a hand saw, whatever the case may be, is completely different than when you're using machines. So the whole dynamic of doing hand jointing as opposed to machine jointing changes. And that's all the way back, that takes us all the way back to the arts and crafts movement and William Ruskell and John Morris and all that. Speak about that later on. And the use of machinery from the industrial age. So I'm going to go down there very close to the shoulder line but not quite touch it. Now an interesting feature with this is when you're using hand tools quite a lot for doing fine furniture, all fine stuff is finished by hand. By me it is anyway. Everybody has their own way. I'm not here to say to somebody you should do this and you should do that. I'm not about that. I have no interest in that at all. You'll see the piece sticking up at an angle there, and that's because there's a 5 degree angle on this here, and I want that angle vertical in the vise as I cut it. So always keep the piece low on the vise and keep the cut vertical. I can use my tried and trusted bench block if I want, no problem, bench hook if I wish. So I'm just going over here, I have the two lines there, the 2 points. And when you're using a saw to cut off what's remaining of the shoulder there, or the waist, the sound of the saw changes. It changes tack, or it changes its sound when you come close to where the little waist piece is going to fall off. So watch out for that. The sound will always change. It will go softer. So if I turn that over now, and you'll see now the piece has gone down the way because I'm keeping the cut vertical in the vise. So I'm back out here. I'll always start across there using the thumb, and I get the line. The shoulder line is very important to get the shoulder line right, and there's very little waist there that comes off. So that's my tenon cut there, and it's perpendicular. It's a right angle here from the shoulder line. So I needed to fit in to the stretcher rail which goes across the front of the piece there. Now a very important part of jointing there, that's too tight. So there's no problem. It's better to have it too big rather than too small, even though it cuts the waist side of the line. I get a chisel like this, flat chisel. I'm over here, and I'm just going to take the saw marks off of the actual tenon, just the saw marks. I don't want to overdo it, and I want to maintain the actual size of the tenon on the end there. I don't want to diminish that at all. So I'll flip that over, take the saw marks off. Now I normally call that engineering the joint, because you're going for a finer finish. And that's what fine furniture is all about. Now there are times, and many times, where you're looking, if it's an examination system, you're looking for the finish off a saw, and that's perfectly understandable and perfectly legit. The whole purpose of fine versus rough, or saw cut finish versus engineered cut, is down to what it is, the result you require. So it depends on what you're doing. So I'm just going to take that out here, and it's just a final point for what I do in my experience. Excuse me. I'm just going around on all fours of the joint there. I'm just going to take the tiniest bit of relief off the back of the tenon there. Now I can clean the shoulders there as well. I can literally come to the shoulders here, and I can just do that with it there to take the actual, just to tidy them up. That's perfect, that one. And the control of the chisel here is the thumb. My thumb and my index finger there are holding the chisel, and thumb on it above here. Now I have to turn towards the camera here just for myself, and I'm getting a vertical cut there just to take out any little piece that's in there. I can also do this, put the chisel across it, tilt it, draw it, and take away the actual little bit of shaving that's there. So I want it to go in there nice and gently, and that particular fit there now that goes in by hand. If it was any tighter than that there, that's the joint I want. If it's any tighter than that there, I'll starve the joint of glue when I go to glue it up. So I need it to be able to go together by hand. I could actually relieve that a little bit more, just ever so slightly, and ever so slightly with the chisel there again. So when I glue up the tenon and I glue up the mortise, that when the joint goes together, the glue isn't all squeezed out, because if you starve the joint of glue, that joint can fail at a later date. So this particular one, that's the tenon. There will be a cut going into this at a later date, and I'll be putting a wedge into it as well to spread the tenon itself. And because this is softwood, it requires a good wedge in there to make sure that it doesn't come apart in 10 or 20 years time. So that's the joint, all cut by hand. That's all cut by hand, every part of it. And that's the tenon there as well, that's all cut by hand also. The mortise is done on the machine. So I'm mixing the old with the new. So to recap, the sound of the saw when you're working by hand brings you into a different mode of thinking, because it's you touching the material. It's not you interfacing with a saw in the middle like a machine saw. It's not that where the saw is doing all the work and you're going with a different sound and the machine is doing the work. You're working directly with the hand to the material and also the tool. So it's the hand to the tool to the material, and you've got that relationship with it, and that's what craft is all about, and doing fine furniture work. The machines are great as well, of course. Another story for another day. Okay, slán go fóill, bye for now.